Well, hello, fellow baseball nuts, and a big warm welcome to the season-ending show from the Jonny and Josh Baseball Show here in our third season. And it's a great pleasure to welcome the boys just, less than 24 hours after the World Series is over. Great to have JC with us from across the pond, and Erik, the producer, who I believe was up watching the game live, Erik.
Yeah, I'm pretty tired. Even with the four-hour time difference, with the clocks going back for a while here in the UK, and now the US and Canada just joined the rest of the world last night by putting their clocks back. Even that 4-hour time difference, I'm still pretty tired.
What is that, JC? What's that about, delaying the decision? The rest of the world have done it. You guys have got to leave it a period of time. Is that you guys just trying to, show us your muscles? You're the big boys across the pond. What's going on?
We're America. America could do what it wants to do.
Okay,
Canada's like muscles too,
Yeah, but Canada's. I mean, everybody tells me Canada's a sophisticated America. That's what I've been told.
Oh, I don't know who you're talking to. I love those. I've just been told. People have told me.
Is that right? I always say just generically people, so I don't have to I don't have to put my hands up and claim it for myself. Okay. Well, look, guys, just before we get into a season roundup, and most important of all, just to talk about the 2022 World Series, let's just do our usual. At the top of the show, we got a COVID update. We managed to get through an entire World Series without any major problems. We pretty much got through the whole season. I mean, no COVID and no Dave. That seems to be going hand in hand at the moment. Where's Dave?
Well, today is a special day for his daughter. It's her bat mitzvah. He's got like a bazillion family members over at his house in New York. And
it wouldn't be today. Wasn't on Saturday?
It was yesterday, but the entire family's over the whole weekend. So with like, it's a thing you do. I mean, obviously I'm not Jewish, but I've got a lot of Jewish friends. And I know all about bat mitzvahs, and I've been to many bars and bat mitzvahs, and it is quite the party and the weekend thing, and a lot of nosh, a lot of good food.
And I have to say, when you consider the massive signing on fee we paid Big Dave, do you feel we've got value for money? Do we feel like he's produced in the 2022 season?
Yeah, I feel as if Dave is sort of conveniently been missing our shows because he knows something about our quality that we don't know about.
Can any individual have so many grandmothers' birthdays that he's got to be at? I mean, are his grandmothers even still alive?
Right. The alternative to that is maybe he just has a life in a way that we wouldn't understand.
That's what frightens me the most, JC. Absolutely. Well, I just want to say officially, we miss Dave. It's never quite the same without him. And anyway, we send him all the best and hope that his daughter's bar mitzvah was a huge success, as I'm sure it was. Now, this is the Jonny and Josh show you're listening to. It's going to be the season-ending wrap-up show. As always, we need that big up for social media. YouTube videos are back. Yes, you can see us in the flesh. Do check out our channel. I'm going to point at the bottom because apparently that's where you subscribe and you hit the like button. Now, our podcast, and this is important, guys, will be moving to a new platform very soon called Audio Boom. And this is happening in the next few weeks. So if you want to check out any of our previous episodes and or future shows, then do keep an eye on our social media platforms or YouTube channel on where to actually find us. Very, very important. Now, yes, Erik,
but in the meantime, though, it'll still be where it is in our proper URLs and our proper YouTube channel. But that's like Jonny said, let's keep it on our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram of where we're moving to, where you can see the archive of previous episodes and hear us in the future. If there is a future for us.
Oh, don't say that.
It might be bleak, but there'll still be a future. Let's just say that.
Is this the Jonny and Josh equivalent of Who Shot JR? That it's just like a mystery. We're not offering any insights. It's just creating a bubble of anticipation.
Or it's MASH, it is goodbye, farewell, and amen.
Yeah, can we be honest? We're really just begging for people to want us to come back at some point, right?
Yeah,
like that's what we do every year. Like, yeah, please. Oh, we're not gonna go. We're gonna go. Oh, tell us we shouldn't.
The majority of people out there are just going, yeah, nice knowing you.
Yawn. So, I need to get all of my day. Can you finish this podcast?
Yeah. Who are you again? Right, give us some trivia. Come on, give us something.
Trivia's coming up. Because unless you've been hiding in a cave with your eyes shut and your ears plugged. Yes, the Dusty Bakers won the World Series, if you haven't heard, by the way.
There were other people involved too there, Erik.
Such as?
Well,
Well, just
the
a
rest of the
squad
Oh
of
Astros,
yeah,
players.
the rest
Exactly.
of the Astros. Yeah, but
Yeah. a whole organization, rowing
Technicality.
together
Backroom
in one
staff,
direction.
management, fans. Yeah,
all right, fine.
just
Okay.
just a few million, but no one else.
So
Don't worry.
you're just ruining my Dusty Baker based question here. Moving on.
Okay, go on.
Now Dusty Baker, he's now he won the World Series in his 97th game postseason game managed as a manager. If you say you can
Keep going, buddy. You could get to the
So
end of
yes,
this. I know
so
you
he's
can.
fourth all time on the list.
Grammar was never your forte.
He's nice. He's fourth on the list with 97 postseason games managed. My question to you is, though, obviously, who is first with most postseason games managed? All right.
Okay.
Now, is it A, Tony La Russa, who also won World Series in the end, or is it B, Bobby Cox, who also won World Series in the past?
Yeah.
Or is it C, Joe Torre, who also apparently won World Series in the past as well? So those are your three questions. Who has won them? Who has played managed the most postseason games?
Right, and it's not games won. It's just the most
managed games in the
postseason
postseason.
games.
Could have won them, couldn't have lost them. Could never have tied, but yes, there you go.
Okay.
Answer later on in the show.
Right, okay, let's move it on. Lead off batter number one. Let's get right to the World Series. First of all, let's say congratulations to the Houston Astros. There's a lot of UK Houston Astro fans, so I know they're absolutely thrilled. We send them all our sincerest congratulations. And obviously this on their 6-game win over the series. Just to wrap up what happened, of course, as you know, the Phillies came out fighting. I think game one was the most exciting game of the lot. Astros jumped out to 5-0 lead. Phillies win it in the 10th, 6-5. Then they go Saturday, and this, of course, was in Houston. And this time the Astros jumped into another 5-0 lead. The Phillies got a couple of runs, but that was all they could do. Series tied 1-1. Then we've got a day off. Then we go to Philly, and we think, wow, with that crowd, and they have been passionate, this could be very interesting. And it certainly was. Game 3, Phillies wiped the board, 7-0, beating the Astros, take a 2-1 lead. By the way, bookies here in the UK made the Astros 6-4 against after they took after that deficit to go 2-1 down, because as we know the numbers, the team that wins the third game, there's something like 70+% normally go on to win the World Series. Anyway, that's another story. Then Wednesday, Astros just jumped back. That's going to be one I'm sure we're going to focus on. That was game 4. Astros completely no hit, and that's combined, 4 pitches to win it 5-0. Yet another 5-0 game. Thursday, and I thought we all knew that was going to be the crucial one. We're back in Houston. The Phillies absolutely had to win that game. The series tied 2-2. What a game it was. Astros win a thriller 3-2 to take a 3-2 lead in the best of 7 series. And then it's Saturday back in Houston. Sorry, Thursday we're still in Phillies, back in Houston on Saturday. And the Astros dominated game 6 to win it 4-1. And that was, of course, last night from recording. We're recording this on Sunday night to win the series 4-2. So, JC, that's a wrap up of the 6 games. 4-2, the final series score in favor of the Astros. And I'm assuming the shutout on Wednesday that tied the series. What a performance from the Astros starter and from their relief pitchers. I mean, absolutely stunning. To no hit, the hot Phillies. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that team, both these teams, it really was an issue of, could the Phillies, great bats with the power that they have, overcome some fantastic pitching from the Astros? You knew that the Astros were going to be a professional offensive team, which is what they are. And what was fascinating, of course, about the Astros was the up and downs of these various series in this postseason, where you have you have Altuve struggling, then he comes back, plays well in the World Series. Yordan Alvarez struggles, then hits the home run late in the series. So, you knew that there was going to be someone to pick up the slack there. But the question was whether guys like Schwarber and Harper from the Phillies lineup, Castellanos, Realmuto, whether those guys were going to trump. And when they did, clearly they won. That's how they got their 2 wins, which is they just bashed their way to victory. But overall, you look at it, and it's the pitching of the Astros that stands out. And that no-hitter is emblematic of the whole series. I think that the Astros struck out the Phillies 10 or more batters in every single game. And so, it was just a dominating pitching performance, solid offense, and really blunting, particularly when they were in Philadelphia, the Phillies offense, because at home they were just world beaters, and they weren't able to really maintain that throughout this series.
And in the 4 games the Astros won, the Phillies scored 5 runs. As you quite rightly say. I mean, at the end of the day, those were games dominated by the pitching. I didn't get to watch a lot of the games live. I'm incredibly busy at the moment, so I physically could not put up with that. As we all know, I'm an incredibly old man and I need my sleep. But I did watch a lot of highlight shows, and I have to say, even though for the purist, Game 4, the shutout was amazing. For me, the excitement was Game 1. When the Astros take a 5-0 lead and the Phillies came back and ultimately won it in the 10th. And you do feel, and I did feel that night, wow, is this meant to be? Is this written in the stars? These fighting Phillies, they just don't know when to quit. And you really got a feeling that there was that level of self-belief.
I love that you keep on calling Game 4 a shutout instead of a no-hitter. Are you in that?
Sorry.
Well, no, but I mean,
I love the
there are
fact
people.
I love the fact that you called it no-hitter instead of a combined no-hitter.
Well, it is a combined no-hitter, isn't
Well,
it? A no-hitter's you can't say it's a no-hitter because that's only one.
You got to say combined.
Well, do you? I mean, this is the big social media argument, right? It's not a real no-hitter. You have multiple pitchers. It doesn't count. Blah blah blah. I mean, are you in that camp?
No, it's a combined no-hitter, but it's
yeah. I think what was fast.
Still impressive.
What was fascinating, right, is Christian Valdez threw 97 pitches. That's the total number of pitches that Don Larson pitched when he threw a perfect game in 1956. Javier threw just 6 innings to get to that number of pitches. It's just such a different game. This is why I'm like, no hitter. It's time and place. The way people play baseball now is fundamentally different than the way they played it 70 years ago, 60 years ago. And so if it's now combined no hitters, it's still something special. I appreciate the whole concept that the no-hitter for the singular player is such an amazing achievement. That player fights fatigue, goes through the lineup multiple times instead of having the relievers, that maybe there's something elevated about that. But diminishing the combined no-hitter to me is a bit of a hot take annoyance.
Well, let's rewind to my original question about the belief that the Phillies showed. I mean, there was a point there where I wondered whether it was destined in the stars, despite my belief that the Astros with this juggernaut that were going to be unstoppable. I had my doubts. When the Phillies took a 2-1 lead in the series, I had my doubts that this was written in the stars for the Phillies.
Yeah, and we talked about this on the preview show, Gouldy, where we talked about, is this a team of destiny, right? Whether the Phillies were a team of destiny. But ultimately, it comes down to what I said at the start, which is that it was a team that is a tremendously strong power hitting team when they're on their game, which are the Phillies, and they had momentum through the postseason with it, versus depth of pitching. I mean, the no-hitter is emblematic of what the Astros had in terms of their pitching. Great starting pitching. Verlander finally got off the schneid. He was able to win a World Series game as a starter, but the bullpens just came through, the Rafael Monteros, the Presleys. These guys were able to show that they had tremendous depth. It's sort of the blueprint that the Rays have had for so many years, where you have all these arms coming in, guys who you'd never heard of throwing 97-mile-an-hour 2-seamers, right? And that's the Astros to a certain extent. And so when it came down to it, the team of destiny was blunted by a team that had just depth of pitching.
The one thing we haven't mentioned with regards to this World Series is the big talking point. It's Dusty Baker. There are still plenty of people out there that hold the Astros, and understandably still hold them in some sort of major negativity because of Trash Can Gate, and yet to me, that's history. That's 3-4 years back. This team is a clean team. This is an incredibly talented team, and he's an amazing manager who has so clearly deserved that World Series ring. And it stuns me that he hasn't got one to date, and now he has. And I'm thrilled. I'm genuinely thrilled. Don't get me wrong. I'm sad for the Phillies, but I am actually genuinely thrilled for Astro fans, but particularly for Dusty Baker.
Undoubtedly. And I think we're going to hear from David a little later. He did a little recorded thing, and he was not nearly as sanguine and enthusiastic about this as we were. But the three of us have met so many baseball players over the years, players, managers. And I think that, I know Erik would agree with me, that of all the people we've met, he's probably top 5 in terms of just a kind, generous soul, calm, collected, appreciates the game, respects the game. There's no doubt, and it's not surprising to me that people play for him because they respect him. And that's at this point in time, with all the analytics, all of that sort of stuff, we get down to the base of what a manager does, which is, can they own the clubhouse? Can they remain positive? Can they get their team up? And that's Dusty, right? He's a guy who owned the respect of his team. Now, it helps that he had a team. You look at these guys, they are professionals. You know, all of them are just grinders, focus players, the Altuves, the Bregmans. These guys are, when I say a professional baseball player, obviously they're all professional, but there's some people who take the professionalism of coming in every day, you know, very seriously. And when Dusty was talking in the post-game interview, he said, whether we won or lost, they came back with the same approach every day of the season, because those are the type of players they are. So it was the perfect combination of manager and players to have this level of success.
Okay, before we talk a bit more about Dusty, you've just referenced the fact that we've got some comments from Dave which aren't as positive. So let's hear what Dave Lengel has to say about the Astros World Series win in 2022, and in particular with reference to the manager Dusty Baker.
I just want to say that I thought, one thing I did think is that if the Astros won the World Series, that I would be like, oh, Dusty won. Oh, I'm so happy for Dusty. And now that the Astros have won the World Series, I can tell you that I really don't give a shit that Dusty Baker won the World Series. Everybody's probably saying that this World Series title legitimizes the Astros dynasty. That is, of course, a bunch of hooey.
And they won.
Yes, they did. My son is asking if they won. And, you know, the Astros, we shouldn't forget. When time passes, though, here's the thing. You forget everything. You forget that the Dodgers won in some ridiculous World Series in 2020. You forget who wins in strike years. In time, believe it or not, we'll forget that Barry Bonds cheated to 73. All this stuff goes away, and it just becomes record in a record book. So it will say Houston Astros in 17. Nobody will think about it. And then they'll see another lost World Series in 19. And then they'll see a one World Series, and people will say, oh, Astros dynasty. So that's what's happening right now. An Astros dynasty. They've been to 6 straight ALCSs. They win all the time. Their organization is insanely well run. And I guess that's the way it is. You know, it's up to other teams to catch up. Bye.
Okay, so not too surprising. Dave loves to go out on a tangent. I am somewhat surprised. I can't agree with him in any way, shape or form. I also don't think you can undermine the difference Dusty made. There were some nervous moments in that World Series, not prior to that, not in the divisional series, not in the championship series. They were an absolute juggernaut who just, you know, wiped away the opposition, the Mariners and the Yankees. But in that World Series, there were moments where there may be some doubts were entering into a few heads, but not in his head. Every time the camera panned to Dusty Baker, the manager of the Houston Astros, JC, I just saw a man with total self-belief and total calm.
Well, he was very driven, and his team was very driven, right? All the players wanted to erase 2017. I mean, they won a World Series, but all the hoo-ha and the criticism of that team.
Yeah.
So they had something to prove, particularly the leaders on that team who were still around from that period. And Dusty Baker had something too to prove. Game 6 had been his bane. The first World Series, Gould, you and I ever did together was the 2002 World Series, Giants versus the Angels. And I remember the Game 6. We actually, this is a little history. You may not remember, Goldie, because you're the Goldfish, but we actually cracked open a couple of beers before the game was over because we thought the season was over and the Giants were going to win. Amazing comeback. The Angels win that game. They go on to win in Game 7. There were ghosts for Game 6 for Dusty, and he was able to overcome it. Dave, you know, I know he has a heart. We know him. He's a sweet guy, but he is not showing it on this one, right? I mean, this is a guy who's grinded for so long as a player. I mean, he played with Hank Aaron as a player with the Braves, played with the Dodgers when I was growing up. He's been a manager for 23 years. I mean, this guy has given himself to baseball. If you can't be happy for him, even if you didn't know that he was a great guy, then you're not into baseball, and, you know, you're a little bit of cold inside.
I think we should just reference, for anybody that perhaps isn't as well informed as the vast majority of our listeners here on this podcast, that we're talking about an Astros team that have attracted a lot of negativity because back in 2017, when they won the World Series, beat the Dodgers, they got caught up. Few years later, a player came out and admitted that they'd been doing illegal signaling of tipping the pitches, using a trash can, became known as Trash Can Gate. A lot of justified negativity towards the team as a result of that. They didn't get the title taken away from them, which I think annoyed an awful lot of people. I think we should point out that, one, we said the appointment of Dusty Baker as the manager was the perfect appointment for a team that needed to cleanse its soul. And I think they've done that. We should also point out there are only 5 players left in that lineup in 2022 that were there in 2017. And one of those, Alex Bregman, said about Dusty Baker, he has been an unbelievable manager. His man management is perhaps his greatest skill. Those players will walk through a wall for that man. They believe in him. He instills that competitiveness, but also that belief, that self-belief, and that team unity. And no one, Dave Lengel, us, should underestimate the importance of Dusty Baker to this title.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple other things that David touched on that I found sort of interesting. One was whether people are going to forget about 2017. It's just going to become a spot in time. I disagree with that. I think that's what sports are all about, right? Is the long memory, the having a pint and discussing all the elements 30, 40 years later. We do it today when we try and compare players from different eras. So I certainly think that that's something that I disagree with him. I think that 2017 is always going to stand on its own. People are always going to argue about the meaningfulness of that or the lack thereof. And they're going to have to live with that. But now they have this World Series to sort of suggest, well, look, we were a great organization. We had a great run. The second thing that he brings up that I found was interesting was the concept of whether this is a dynasty team or not at this point. And despite all their success in the postseason, I realize that postseasons go on longer. It's much harder to win a World Series with all these different layers. So if you get deeper, maybe you consider that a big success, winning a league championship series. But still, the Astros have only won 2 World Series in 6 years. Even the Giants in that 2010 to 2016 period won 3. So I still think that the jury is out whether the Astros have reached dynasty status yet.
Okay, and I'm going to offer the opposite argument that I think they certainly have. I mean, they've only been around for 60 seasons in Major League Baseball. They've qualified for the postseason 15 times. That's 25% of the time. Pretty amazing. They've reached the World Series 5 times, particularly recently, 2005, the first time. But in recent times, 17, 19, 21, and 22, and they've won 2 of them. That seems pretty damn impressive. If I was an Astros fan, I'd be pretty happy with that return.
Impressive, but not a dynasty. To me, you got to win 3 championships for a dynasty. When you look back to the teams that are considered dynastic, you look back to the Cincinnati Reds in the mid-'70s and the Oakland A's in the mid-'70s. You look back to the Yankees teams. You look to the Giants. All of them won in a reasonably short period 3 World Series. Now, I get deeper playoffs. It's more impressive to get a little deeper. If you don't win it all, you're not a dynastic team. You got to win it all. Are
you betting against the Astros winning it again? I know they've got a couple of oldies, but look at their superstars. Look at the Alvarez. Look at Pina, the new shortstop, the young rookie short. Look at their pitching arms. These are young kids. They've got a huge future. Okay, and as long as Dusty stays in charge.
Goldie, you don't listen as always. I said the jury's still out. Okay. If they win another one, 100%. Get your 3rd championship, and you then add in all the other success in the postseason, they're there. I think at this point, though, if they were to go off the boil, if all their players were no longer as talented, they don't win anything else, I'm not sure that this snapshot of this team is enough to be defined as a dynastic club.
Okay, I know you're going to hit that bell in a minute, Erik, but I just want to say one final thing before we wrap up the World Series.
I got stuff to say too, you know. So.
Yeah, and I want to hear your point of view, buddy. But I just want to ask both of you one question. It would be amiss not to talk about the Phillies. We focused on the Astros, and so we should. They won it, and they've been amazing. The Phillies, is this the first step in a journey, or is it a one-off?
They need to improve. The team is not quite good enough yet to be a consistent contender. They've got a lot of talent. They have offensive talent. The defense can be better, but I think they still need to figure out their pitching. They still need to figure out the bullpen. I mean, they're relying on Sir Anthony a little too much, David Robertson. They don't have that depth of bullpen. And when you look at the teams that are consistently good, they have that along with the other pieces. So good team, could be better if they want to compete consistently.
And of course, Rob Thompson, he's NL Manager of the Year for me.
Because he's Canadian?
No, because he picked up a team at 21 and 29 and got to the World Series.
Yeah, interesting. Don't always have to go with a manager that wins it, I suppose. Yeah, we are of course talking about Mr. Thompson, the manager of the Phillies, National League manager. There you go. You can take that one. Okay, let's move it on. Oh, sorry.
I got more. You know, it's like you don't see my hand gestures when I point to you.
Oh, I apologize.
Someone needs a hug.
No, I just want to throw one more Dusty tidbit, of which there are many.
Go on.
He now also holds the record because he won the World Series with the Dodgers in 1981, and it took him 41 years, yes, as a manager, to win another World Series. So that's a 41-year gap, and that's a record from anybody who's actually won the World Series as a player and then won it as a manager. 41-year gap. There you go.
Wow.
Also the oldest.
And the
World
oldest
Series winning
at
manager
73 years young, the oldest manager ever to win the World Series as well. There you go.
Hey, there's hope for us. 73, and he's still doing what he does. Hey, we could be still doing this podcast.
Like 3 listeners. All our family will no longer be with us. There'll be no one to listen.
Who are they?
Okay. Let's move on. Okay, we're going to do some talking points. I know we've just been talking about Dusty, and I do just want to ask one question more with reference to him. I think there was quite a decent amount of support out there for the Astros, neutral support. People were happy for Dusty Baker and Trey Mancini. But the big question I want to ask you guys, has Dusty and what they've achieved erased the bad taste of the 2017 trash can game?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to what we were saying before, Goldie, is I think it will always be there. I think that people love to wring their hands and be angry about the people who they disagree with. Time softens it a little bit, but we're many years on from Barry Bonds. No one's ready to let that go. No one's ready to let Roger Clemens go. My point is that there is always going to be argument over the validity of it, for better or for worse. And again, that's the nature of being a sports fan. Ultimately, is you need all that conflict and contrast over time, and that's what people love about it.
But buddy, you see, I disagree with you to a degree here, because I don't give a monkey's about Roger Clemens or any others. I don't lose sleep about their situation. I do about Barry Bonds, as you know. But the reason why I think it's different is, this was a one-off with the Astros. And yes, they, in some people's eyes, they defied the Dodgers from winning a title or winning a ring. There's no guarantee that would have happened. But with Bonds, the reason why it does get my goat, and I am sort of up on my high horse about it, is because he took away a home run record that should be now Aaron Judge's. He took away a career home run record that is, and I don't care what anybody says, Hank Aaron's. And that legacy, that stealing, it really does upset me. Whereas this isn't comparable. It's not the same games. It's not the same playing field.
Yes.
I that doesn't track for me, Goldie, because if you're a Dodgers fan and you feel that you had something taken away from you, a championship, you could be just as incensed as you feel. And other people may not care about the home run record. They may, to them, maybe World
everybody
Series
cares about the home run,
but
because everybody loved Hank Aaron. Don't
Goldie,
you dare say otherwise.
You just said you didn't care about Roger Clemens. Think about all of Clemens's records, all of his success, everything that he led to, and has a similar type of tarring that Bonds has. Again, it's about your preference about what matters to you. And I get that, the home run record matters to you more than a single World Series, but that's sports, is that we all have the things that we connect to and that matter to us. And I think that it's just not going to go away. It will forever be something that is in the firmament of discussion.
Okay, a couple of other talking points, and this is about the World Series. Jose Alvarado, some people are saying unfairly blamed for 2 tipping points of the series. Would you argue that he is justifiably being blamed, or was it the mistake of Thompson, the NL Manager of the Year, aka Erik's coronation there, to rely on him at those crucial points in the game? Was it unfair to keep going to him in these crucial moments?
Well, I mean, this speaks to what I was saying before, where I was talking about Dominguez, talking about Robertson, is, you only have so much in the bullpen for a team like this. This wasn't a depth pen, so you just have that sort of situation where it's just difficult. So, it's just a tough team from that standpoint, roster. So I again, the whole thing about World Series is that we look for GOATs, not greatest of all times, but the GOATs, the ones that it costs. And that's just so unfair because these are such a small microcosm of the overall performance, of a team. And then any one moment can be the fulcrum for where we shift the success and failure. And so to blame that individual, any individual for a play or two, an inning or two, a performance or two in a World Series, I feel is not doing justice to sort of the more holistic experience of what happened over the season and over this series and the whole postseason.
Okay, well, on a positive note, let's talk about the rookie shortstop for the Astros, Jeremy Pena. Talk about a crazy meeting. Sorry?
Pena.
I apologize. Pena. Okay, I'll make sure I get that right, particularly since I'll be drafting him in next season's fantasy draft. It was a crazy meteoric rise. Everybody said his kid had talent, but he was ALCS, American League Championship Series MVP. He was World Series MVP, and he's a rookie. How special is this kid? How good can he be?
Yeah, he's a shortstop too, and great defensive shortstop, right? Golden Glove winner this year. First positional player, I believe, as a rookie to win the Golden Glove, which speaks to the impression he gave to players around the league who I believe still vote on the Golden Glove.
Yeah,
I think what's amazing is this speaks to the Astros as much as to Pena. 3rd round draft pick out of University of Maine, comes from the Dominican Republic. I love when Dusty said, hey, he's the only dude I know is from the Dominican Republic who went to college in Maine, which is, in the far Northeast where it's cold, although he did basically grow up in that area. He moved there when he was 9. But it speaks to the Astros, right? In that you lose Correa and you can slot in Pena, and Pena is every bit as good. When you have that level of depth and you're able to develop players like that, now maybe this is a bit of luck, but I think it speaks a little bit to the development, right?
100%. And also now suddenly you think, what were they doing when they let Correa go? And now you think, well, no wonder. They got a kid with this sort of talent sitting in the wings. Totally makes sense that you'd let a guy who, let's face it, a lot of us rated very highly. And will Atlanta, by the way, and I do want to get your point of view, I know it's got nothing to do with the World Series. There's big talk about Dansby Swanson being moving on. And that he's quite keen to move on. That'd be a disaster. Because I'm not aware of any Penas sitting in the back room waiting to take over.
But there are a lot of shortstops out there, right? Correa opted out of his contract. Trey Turner is available. So I think it's going to be a very vibrant shortstop market. But I think Erik wanted to talk, Goldie, before you sidetrack.
Yes, you just never listen to my hand signals. No, but one little bit of tidbit going back to Dusty Baker. Interesting bit of trivia, by the way. 1993, Dusty Baker's first game that he's as a manager, he managed against a team that had a Geronimo Pena on it, who eventually had a son called Jeremy, who became World Series MVP for Dusty Baker.
Wow.
Don't you just love that stat? Come on, give it to me.
Sliding doors, amazing. Well, no, actually, it's not really sliding doors.
There's nothing sliding doors.
No,
nothing. It just speaks to the longevity of Dusty Baker.
It just goes down the list of wow, man.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk a little bit about it in a few, but that's like very pool host type stats. Where hitting home runs off of fathers and sons and all that sort of stuff. When you stick around long enough, you always have those kind of crazy overlaps.
Love it. Moving on.
Okay, trying to wind this World Series chat up. One final question for you both. JC, what about the Astros next year? Repeating, as the Braves found, is incredibly difficult. Are they going to be good enough to repeat what they've done this year?
Well, it's always hard with the postseason, right? You have these longer postseason, which is a shorter off season. This one particularly, we moved all the way into November. So that is always going to be a challenge. But you look at their free agency players, often when you win a World Series, you lose a lot of players because the value of them goes up. But Gurriel's going to be a free agent. He was a bit of a disappointment this year. Brantley is going to be a free agent. He was injured. Michael Brantley, great player, but injured. Really, Rafael Montero, who is a key bullpen cog, is probably the best player who's going into free agency. So this is a team that could stick together pretty easily and compete again.
And you've already mentioned the Phillies as well. Who else is going to compete against the Astros? Because I genuinely thought the Braves were better this season than they were last. And given the fact that they won it all last season, I really fancied them on a repeat, and yet got blown away by the Phillies. Anyone else out there? The Dodgers, have they slightly gone over the precipice? Are they not quite the team they were, the monster team they were? The Yankees, after the season they've had, but they got wiped out in the championship series. Anyone else there to threaten Houston?
Well, I think all the teams you mentioned, I think the Yankees, Dodgers, they always have the money, right? So they're going to lose player. Aaron Judge may go away. Dodgers may lose Trey Turner, but they're always going to have the money. So they're always going to be competitive. I think you have to put the Mets in that category as well, too, primarily because, once again, with Steve Cohen now, they've got the money. So there are a lot of interesting National League side teams. I think the Braves still can be competitive. The Padres can still be competitive. It'll be interesting to see what American League teams step up besides the Yankees. I think the Blue Jays, you're going to have to look at again as well.
And Erik, just to give you the opportunity to wind this all down, you love a ridiculous out of left field tip. I think you said the Orioles at the beginning of this season. Anybody for next season that you're looking at and thinking they could surprise a few?
I did say the Orioles were going to be a dark horse, and people forget. I think you forgot that I also said the Mariners were going to be a dark horse. This season, and they were. As far as dark horses next season, I think it's still too early to tell. There's gonna be a lot of movements happening in this offseason. You just know it.
And Eric's reminding things. Gouldy, do you remember what my prediction was for the World Series?
Conveniently, no.
Of course. Yeah, I picked the Astros in 6.
Did you say the Astros in 6? Did you?
There you go.
And what did I say?
Astros in 5.
Okay. Well, they should have won it in 5. I think we all know that. If they let me down, I didn't let them down. It was abundantly clear I was right.
Classic Gouldy. Classic Gouldy.
First and last waffle of the game.
Okay, there goes a waffle. Hit that bell. Okay, well, let's move things on. We've got our second batter up, and that is, of course, the 2022 season recap. I think there's an obvious place we've got to start, JC. Aaron Judge, where will he be after this amazing season, hitting 62 home runs? Where will he be in 2023 as a free agent? Rumor has it San Francisco will do literally anything to get him, but there must be other people in the market.
Oh, yeah. They talk about the season right before you go to free agency as your platform year. This is the biggest platform ever erected before you go into free agency, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to have any suitor that he wants. He's going to make big money. You know, it's a question of he's a great outfielder, obviously a great power hitter. Can he maintain it? The big issue with sport, right, is we pay for past performance. Whatever they did in the past, that's what you get paid for the future. Yeah. And so can he be this player consistently? I mean, he's not going to hit 63 home runs every year, but can he be a player of that magnitude or in that range moving forward? And someone is definitely going to put down the big dosh for that.
I mean, health is the issue, isn't it? I mean, the question mark has always been that he's had a lot of health issues, injury issues, despite being a young man. You know, you expect that at a certain age, but not when you're a youngster. And then suddenly he has a season where his health was fantastic, and look what he was able to do. And let's face it, it's not the first time he's hit 50 plus. So we know it's in the bag. It isn't a freak of nature. It isn't a one-off. If he stays healthy, he's going to produce those sort of numbers again.
I mean, this is the X factor for so many players, right, Gouldy, is that can they stay healthy? It's interesting when free agency tends to come right around your, 30 to 32 is the typical period. And that's the point where a lot of people are starting to break down a little bit. Major League Baseball season is very long. You hear all the people who don't know about baseball like, oh, it's such a soft game. It's so easy. But the length of the season, the wear and tear is heavy. And you really don't know at 30, 32, whether you're going to be able to give you another 5-6 years of similar performance based on retaining physical ability or whether you're going to break down. And that's always the gamble.
And Erik, you've retained such incredible physical strength and fitness for so many years. I'm assuming you've got some tips. You can maybe give Aaron a quick call, help him out, with the future.
One word, Erik: poutine.
Poutine and smoked meat sandwiches. Yeah. But the thing is as well is like I guess San Francisco would be a good fit. He'd voiced that he wouldn't mind going to the Giants, but is that stadium, is McCovey Cole conducive to him being he probably would be, actually.
Bonds did it.
And it's become a lot more hitter friendly, right? Like they moved in the fences all around.
That's right.
Oppo for him, yeah.
Am I right in saying he's a West Coast kid?
Yes, he went
Yeah.
to, was it Fresno State? Something in the West Coast. I'm trying to remember
So him
exactly.
going back that way, back towards California, would make. I mean, hate to say it, but I can see the Dodgers piling in.
Well, I mean, they're going to have some money for sure. I just don't know if that's their need, right? I mean, they're going to want a shortstop. That would probably make a huge difference. Yeah, he went to Linden High School and went to Fresno State.
Fresno State. Okay. Well, from one monster hitter to another, and this is a sadness for me, 2022. But I'm so happy he's gone out on a high. We say goodbye finally to Albert Pujols, genuine Hall of Famer, no question. First round.
Yeah. I mean, first ballot, you mean?
First ballot, I mean, yeah.
I mean, you look at his numbers, they match up with Aaron, they match up with Ruth. But it's a fascinating career, really top loaded. His times in St. Louis, he could have been the most elite player, went to the Angels, put up solid at best, but often disappointing numbers, particularly talk about being paid for past performance. Pujols is the poster child of where that can go wrong. Because they had so much money locked up in him. But this final run, and it wasn't the full season, right? It was the second half of the season, was epic, top of career Albert. And that was really fun to watch. I think even if you have questions about, what kind of player he was, anything you might have about good years, bad years, you have to be excited for the old codger coming out, dusting off the bat and crushing. But what was interesting, right, was this whole idea that, he had these grandfathered in bats. Did you follow this whole story about where he had these bats that were composites that seemed to have a lot of pop? And I think, was it Martin Maldonado? There was someone was using it. It was Maldonado who was using one of his bats, and they told him he couldn't use a bat that Tio, Uncle Albert, had given him because it was considered somewhat of an advantage. So, it's always so interesting what tarnishes careers, what makes them. But that was sort of an interesting postscript.
And do you think returning to St. Louis was a difference maker? Because I think he enjoyed his time in LA last season, having left the Angels. But do you sort of feel like that trip home may have been the perfect way to end it all, and then get beyond 700 as a career total?
If you want to see the turning point, it literally happened in a blink of an eye, and it was the home run derby at the midseason. To me, seeing the way it was, almost like he changed, where a weight was taken off. He started hitting bombs in that. He started getting that streaming. And I feel like that wave carried him to a certain extent to that second half. That was amazing.
Rediscovered the joy, JC. That's what it was. Okay, let's talk about rule changes. Goodbye to the shift. Are you looking forward to the new rules? We've got bigger bases, pitch clock coming as well. I mean, there's quite a few significant changes. What's your thoughts?
Okay, I'm going to sort of shift from my long-standing position on this, which is this is still my general rule, that I don't like changes that diminish strategy. And there's an argument that diminishes strategy. But I was giving some thought right here at the end of the season. Do you know that there were only 11 players who qualified who hit over 300 this season? Lowest number of players to hit over 300 since 1968, which was considered the year of the pitcher. That is a long run. And after that year, they lowered the mound. They made some rule changes to shift the balance of power that was so pitcher back a little bit towards the hitter. And as I was starting to think about it, is like, maybe that's what we need. The slightly larger bases, make stolen bases a little easier, you're not fully getting rid of the shift, but, change the way the shift can be used. You can't go past certain bases. And that maybe we do need to shift the balance of power a little bit in the direction of hitters again. And maybe the pitch clock, all three of these rules will help sort of create that balance again, where we see hitters hitting for average again. Now, I think the approach has changed, right? Which is, the approach used to be like, pitchers pitch to contact, hitters were trying to get hits, home runs were great, but let's get hits. And now it's a little bit more work the count, hit a home run. If I strike out, so be it. But my hope is that we're going to see a little bit more contact, a little less strikeouts, and players trying to get hits as much as getting home runs with these changes, and make the game a little more interesting.
Erik, you're a renowned purist. I'm assuming you hate any change.
Well, I don't like the bigger bases. Pitch clock, I think, could be interesting, but my argument is pitch clock, yes, to speed the game up, but not in the postseason.
See, I disagree with that. And this is the ghost runner issue, which is you want to have continuity. It should be the same game in the postseason.
I agree.
In the regular
I'm with
season.
you. I'm
Fair
with you,
enough.
JC.
Make the choice and go that way. Pitch clock, though, in the minor leagues really shorten games. So I'm actually kind of supportive of that. We need to have games shorter to get people interested into a full game instead of watching it into and bailing.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll all be bitching and moaning about it next season, anyways. We're looking forward to it.
Let's talk about one man who is many people's MVP this season. Probably won't get the vote, but in the eyes of many he is, and that is, of course, Shohei Ohtani. To be even better, I mean, let's be honest. He had all sorts of injury problems when he first arrived in the major leagues, which was not surprising given what he has to do, pitching once a week and hitting in the heart of the lineup every night, et cetera, et cetera. Put it all together last season, put it all together again this season. Will he be even better? And if he is, will he be in an Angels jersey?
Yeah, I know. I think I would be shocked if he stayed with the Angels long term. I think that he's going to find somewhere else because he wants to win. And I think he's very frustrated with the situation. I think he should stay on the West Coast. I do think like a warm climate is better for what he does. Yeah. I think if he ends up going, and I know he plays games on the road and there are sort of cold environments.
Atlanta's warm.
Yeah, Atlanta is warm.
Detroit's warm.
The thing that your point brings up to me a bigger point of why he's the MVP, which is I think that after last season, people sort of take it for granted what he's doing. And so Judge's home runs were something that was unique and that, Ohtani had already shown he could do this. So people are sort of gravitating. But I think that what he did this year was just so remarkable. And the ability necessarily to do it again is so difficult that you have to appreciate the year in the vacuum of the season. To me, he was the MVP for the American League.
Yeah, and I have to say it's an argument I can't have an issue with. At the end of the day, to still perform at that level with a team that really, after the first month plus, really stank the place up is incredible. Whereas even though they had a slump, the Yankees still had some seriously good baseball players. So yeah, I can't argue with that. Now, talking about seriously good baseball players, the mighty Mets may have had a disappointing end of the season with the Braves overturning the National League East. But big question, will they now just return to being the old miserable pain in the backside, unreliable Mets? Or will they now, having had the experience of 2022, be even better in 2023? Let's face it, the cash flow of their new owner is going to help.
100%. I said this at the top of the show, Goldie. I think this is a team that is going to be competitive moving forward because you have ownership and you have ownership that also listens to the baseball people, which I think that Steve Cohen's not, George Steinbrenner, who's going to sort of insert himself into the process. I think he's smart enough to know that if he gets the right people in place, you could create an organization like the Astros if you have the money. So I believe, and maybe I know that Dave, I'm sure, is cynically swigging on a bottle of bourbon or something like that, but I believe that they can be a consistently successful team.
Which begs the question, will the Phillies make the postseason? Because you expect the Braves to, and you expect the Mets to, and that's three teams coming out of the same division. Anyway, let's not focus on the National League East. I'll get accused of favoritism. Let's talk about a sad story. We are obviously looking back with sadness. The one that I particularly want to pick out is R.I.P. Vince Scully.
Yeah. I mean, we spent a lot of time chatting about him. I grew up in Los Angeles. He was the voice of baseball to me. He's the one who embodies the concept of listening to baseball on radio, which is something you could do sitting on your back porch with a nice warm breeze in the summer, drinking an iced tea, and feeling almost like the person on the radio is talking singularly to you in a conversation about a game while you guys are watching it together.
That was his gift, JC. Yeah. That was his gift, that ability to make you think he was talking only to you.
Yeah, 100%. It's heartbreaking. But this year's been a tough year for a lot of greats in the game who passed away. Bruce Sutter, who basically developed the split finger fastball. One of the first Hall of Famer relief pitchers, had an amazing career. Maury Wills, who isn't a Hall of Famer, but was one of the real elite historic base runners, stole over 100 bases in a season, passed away. And also a guy who was a lifer in baseball, coach, manager. I mean, the guy spent his whole life in baseball. It's, this time of year is always sad when you reflect on that, the in memoriams. And it reminds us of our mortality, because I know Erik and I can remember when those guys were on the field.
Yeah.
Now they've moved on.
Yeah, we're old.
And just to try and put a positive split on it, I mean, that's the sadness of looking back and people we've lost. Any thoughts on someone that we should be looking out for next season? You know, a young man that perhaps we don't know a great deal about who you think is going to have a big impact. Any thoughts on a particular player that you should be looking out for, particularly if you're a fantasy baseball player like myself?
Well, the Yankees player Dominguez, right? He's fantastic. Jason Dominguez, is that his name? I think it is. I know our listeners are gonna be like, Josh, you should know these, know who's on the farm. But the Yankees have one of those type of hot prospects. But the beauty of baseball, right? Every spring there's a new. They used to call them bonus babies because they got sort of extra money, who are can't miss prospects who we all get excited about. And 1 out of 10 makes it and ends up having a Hall of Fame career. And so it's the journey. And that's what's so beautiful about baseball, right? Is you never know who those guys are going to be. Baseball is a game of late development. The guys who are great at 17 and 18, it takes they don't just remain great because of their talent. They change, they modify what they're doing, they mature. And so even when you have a guy who you think is a can't miss prospect, there are so few that fall into that category, because the ones who really have the Hall of Fame careers, even when they're can't miss, they do so much different over the course of their career to get to that point. It is a long journey to a career of success, even for the guys who you're talking about, Goldie.
Okay, guys, before we round up this review of the 2022 season, I'm going to ask you the obvious question, and that's your highlight. What's that one memory of 2022 that you'll take to your grave? Not specifically and not initially, not immediately, please, boys. But what's the great story? I mean, I was giving this, let me go first so you've got some time to think about it. I was giving it some thought. I mean, there were some interesting moments in this season. I particularly remember the poor pitcher that basically pitched a no-hitter and lost the game. I think was that Cincinnati Reds, I think, against the Pirates back in May. Do you remember that? Went through 25 batters, allowed no hits, 9 strikeouts, gave up 3 walks. You think it's the pitching performance of a lifetime, and he ends up hitting hit by pitch and put somebody on a base, and they brought in a relief pitcher and bish bosh.
It's so memorable for you that you forgot his name.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Like
Hunter Green. I've remembered his name.
Hold my beer while I tell a story that I don't even remember.
No, but I do remember that. I do remember that. Really stuck out to me. What an extraordinary story that was. And yeah, I'm going to be pathetic here, guys. You know how much I love my mighty Braves. I got really caught up in the race for the National League East divisional title. I genuinely believed that we needed to win the title to go all the way, because I felt that avoiding that whole nightmare of the wild card, getting a bye, getting 5 days rest was massive. Turns out actually it was probably completely the wrong thing to do. But I was just so thrilled when you consider the Mets were, the bookies were paying out. I mean, there was one expert in America who said it's a done deal. They've won the division. That was back in like May or June, if I remember rightly. And yet they wore them down. And literally that last week, I remember I was really busy and I was watching live baseball till 3-4 in the morning every single night because it was that exciting. So this is a purely self-indulgent Braves fans moment for 2022, was watching my team against all the odds overtake the big spenders that are the Mets to win the divisional title. And I thought put us in a really good place for the postseason coming up to maybe go back to back with World Series rings. And I even had 20 quid on them at 14-1 to do it. But there you go. That's another story. What about you, JC? What was your favorite memory of 2022?
Goldie, I am a perennial underdog and I love underdogs. And, despite what Erik said, Erik, is like the clock. He's right twice a day. So, there was no reason to expect or a broken clock, excuse me. There was no reason to expect that the Baltimore Orioles were going to be any good. And the fact that they lost 110 games last year and won 83 this year, that was just really enjoyable. I just enjoy teams that they don't have the payroll. They don't have the stars. I mean, they traded Mancini, right? I mean, who was probably their biggest star, Cedric Mullins. I mean, it just wasn't a team of big names, and they grinded to over 500 to play at that level of baseball and to win 83 games. I know it doesn't sound like a lot. But
they're in the American League East as well, which is, traditionally the most competitive division there is.
And if you think about it, only a fewer wins than the Phillies. So, that to me, I love that. I love the teams that surprise. That's the beauty of sport. are those type of
You
experiences.
love an underdog. What about you, Erik?
Well, I didn't have that many. The Tigers sucked this year. Akil Badu sucked this year. So, but well, here's the thing. I was surprised how much I actually enjoyed this World Series. My dad, I call up my dad in Canada, and even I was back home and visited. We watched the ALCS and NLCS, and he said, I just can't get behind these two teams. This is gonna be a very boring World Series. These two teams mean nothing to me. And other friends who said, yeah, these Phillies Astros, can you find a more boring World Series? And I actually really enjoyed that. I was shocked. I enjoyed every game of this 2022 World Series. So that's my highlight that I didn't expect that I would enjoy.
How typical is that, JC? He's just a glory boy. Doesn't talk about the
No.
gamers, doesn't talk about the grinders, doesn't talk about the little men doing well. He focuses on the winners.
No, I'm going to agree with Erik. I think that sometimes when you don't have a horse in the race in the playoffs, you can focus more on the baseball, and you're not partisan. You're just enjoying the sport. So I think it's a good one. Sorry, Goldie.
Okay.
As
Okay,
long
man.
as
No, no, no.
baseball was the winner.
Can I give an honorary mention before we move on? I've obviously already committed my own personal choice, but I'm going to give an honorary mention to that fantastic spat between the Cincinnati's Tommy Pham when he walked out into left field while the Giants were warming up, confronted Jock Peterson, slapped him in the face. I'm not encouraging violence, gave him a slap, and it was all to do with fancy NFL, which Mike Trout was the commissioner. I mean, I'm loving this. What a story that was. That was a highly entertaining part of the season for me. Honorary mention, boys.
I love that your highlights are all really sad moments. Guy loses a no-hitter, dude gets slapped on the field. You're like, there's no upbeat, there's no for love of the game. There's like, I'm laughing at you for your pain.
Because they can
slapping
sympathize.
each other over NFL fantasy football. For God's sake, grow up.
Moving
grow
on.
Up. Okay, ding ding. There we go. Right, we're moving into the 7th inning stretch, which is our opportunity for one final time in the 2022 season for Erik to educate through the culture of baseball. Kicking off with our baseball book of the week.
The funny thing is, I actually don't have one right now because I ordered a baseball book of the week, which I haven't received yet. So I'm actually going to recommend a book I haven't read yet, let alone have in my possession yet. Is that terrible?
Well, it is terrible when you've got, how many books have you written, JC? And he owns all of them, and yet still won't mention
books.
Seven, and he's
like,
still
at some point, Erik. At some point, you got to pay off the gag. I know you're doing it because it's a gag. It's a bit.
Yeah.
At some point, you got to pay it off, buddy. I need love.
I'll unwrap it out of the packaging eventually. Now
I still haven't watched Spinal Tap, by the way.
Yeah. Well, when you watch Spinal Tap, I'll review a Josh book. How's that?
All right, that's a deal. That is a deal.
Okay.
JC, I've got the whole off season.
Cheers, Goldie.
My pleasure.
And I've sent him 3 copies on DVD.
Back.
Anyways, moving on, because I read somebody sent me an article, an old Rolling Stone article. Yes, Rolling Stone magazine. That on Dusty Baker's 18th birthday, his parents, as a present for him being drafted by the Atlanta Braves, bought him a ticket to the Monterey Pop Festival. Wow. And he went. And somehow he got to see and meet The Who, Janis Joplin, Simon and Garfunkel, and Jimi Hendrix.
Wow.
Not Otis Redding? Otis Redding was there.
And Otis Redding was there as well. Thank you. Amongst many. And Jefferson Airplane was there as well. And so a year later, he when he was a bit more famous, he was playing in San Francisco when the Braves were in town, and he met Jimi Hendrix. Now, I haven't read this part in the book yet because I don't have it yet, as you know. But there's a book called Kiss the Sky, written by Dusty Baker, about his experience going to the Monterey Pop Festival. And apparently Jimi Hendrix and him were able to, break the law, and with some medicinal weed.
They went on a journey. A
journey, yes. Another reason, not that I advocate that, kids don't do drugs, but it's a family show. But another reason to love Dusty Baker is that he hung out with The Who and Jimi Hendrix and Simon and Garfunkel and Otis Redding, and kudos to him to have good music taste.
What a life he's led.
So yes,
Yeah.
that my baseball book of the week, "Kiss the Sky" by Dusty Baker. Haven't read it yet, but I'm sure it's going to be amazing compared to other books I still have in packaging. Another reason I love Dusty Baker, by the way, not people know. People were shocked when I said they don't believe me. You can Google it. There's been documentaries about it, but Dusty Baker is the inventor of the high five.
Is he?
Well,
Him and Glenberg, I know. And
right.
those-
You should
that
read
two
my
people
books.
had to be there.
Why don't you read my books?
Oh, is this covered in one of your books?
Yes, in the Book of Nice, the history of the high five is in there. I tell the whole story. It was actually more. It was really Glenn Burke. It was just that Dusty was the recipient.
Yes.
So he didn't invent it; he just received it.
He was, yeah.
Well, the story goes, and if you read in some fine baseball book somewhere, that it was because Glenberg had his hand up. Dusty Baker didn't know what to do about the whole handshake thing. They just slapped each other, and it was
Other way around. Other way around.
Other way
Dusty
around,
Baker
sorry.
had his hands up,
Hands
like,
up,
"Whoa,
and then
great job!" Glenn Burke smacked it.
Yeah, there you go.
So, but this is like saying that somebody walks over the Clifton Bridge and they invented the Clifton Bridge. No, they didn't. They were just the first person to walk over it. What a ridiculous statement, Eric. You need to read
Google
Josh's
it,
books.
and there's documentaries about it, and even Josh Chetwin wrote about it, so it must be true, right? Okay, so.
Yeah, but get the details right.
Yeah, but
Get the details.
I didn't say Dusty Baker invented it, though.
No,
I just said
exactly.
he was a party to an invention.
JC, I knew that because obviously I've read that book.
Yeah.
Oh,
Have you got another cultural reference? Please don't tell me you got some more rubbish.
Actually, no.
baseball music.
I know because we have to. The thing is, I heard some pretty bad Astros music again. I was trawling through as much as I could, old vinyl, old recordings, any old bad song or good song, which there are none of the Astros. Remember this one from the polka music one from Altuve that goes like this.
Not too short, he's 10 feet tall. Comes to bat, he hits the ball. Let's all cheer Altuve. Batting title in his hand, has the crown, he's our man. Let's all cheer Altuve. Hits one here, hits one there, hits everywhere. A double over here, home run.
I was gonna do that one again.
Hits
So
one here, hits
and this is
one
other
there,
one
hits
that's like
everywhere.
country music is my thing. There's this one.
The Astros travel near and far, showing them Yankees who we are. In New York or the Golden Gate, bringing the series to the Lone Star State. Houston Astros baseball team, the greatest nine you've ever seen. Singles, doubles, triples too, make that pennant dream come true. Houston Astros baseball team, the greatest nine you've ever seen. Singles, doubles, triples too, make that pennant dream come true.
So no, not doing that one either. It's just there is no such thing as good Astros music. So I figure we'll just.
We don't have the rights to the Who, right? Because we just talked about the Who or
I
Jimi
know.
Hendrix.
I know.
Jimi Hendrix probably did the Star Spangled Banner, right? He has a famous rendition.
Of course, of course.
Can
And
I
of course,
ask-
Dusty Baker was at the concert where Jimi Hendrix burned his guitar in Monterey and then smashed it up. And
Yep.
Yeah, so we got no baseball book. You basically didn't have any music either. You just played a couple and disposed of them immediately. So have you got an answer to the trivia question?
Well, I have an
Or-
answer, but I have the answer. Do you have the answer? Is more the question.
Yes, I have the
All
answer.
right. So we will let Johnny Gould go first.
Well-
Originally I asked you which
Yes.
manager has managed the most postseason games. Now,
Yeah.
Dusty Baker is fourth all time with 97, but who's number one with most postseason games managed?
And
Johnny
you
Gould.
said Bobby Cox, you said Joe Torre,
And I said
you
Tony La Russa.
Tony La Russa. Okay. Well, when you asked the question, before you even gave us the three options, I immediately went Joe Torre. That was my immediate reaction, just simply because the Yankees were so dominant for a long period of time when we were covering the show. Obviously, there's a lot more postseason games in the modern era. Mind you, they're all basically modern era. I know the Braves obviously made the postseason an awful lot because they won the NL
And Bobby
East
Cox has
divisional
also
title on a
managed
regular.
Toronto
which
to the
was-
final to the playoffs.
Right.
Too.
Yeah. So it wasn't just. So I suppose I should say Bobby Cox, but my instinct was Joe Torre. So I'm going to stick with my instincts. I'm going with Joe.
Interesting.
Just
You're right. So I'm just going to let you know. It's, I mean, I know it's Joe Torre. So I
You
mean,
know that already?
well, just because I knew the answer to this question.
How come? You've
'Cause
been cheating?
Because I know things, Goldie. I know this is really hard for you to get your head around, like reading.
Well, let's see
I
if
knew
you're
there was a
right.
reason we had you on the show.
Let's see if you're wrong.
Yeah,
Actually.
Erik
Go on, then.
ultimately. Erik
Go on.
does.
Let's see the moment. And now Tony Russo has actually managed 132 games in the postseason.
Pathetic. Yeah.
Joe Torre did 142.
Yo, baby.
And Bobby Cox did 136. So correct, Joe Torre is the answer. But it's pretty close. I'm wondering if Tony Russo somehow managed to bring even if he would have brought the White Sox to the postseason this year, he probably could have tied Torre if he went all the way. You never know.
Interesting.
He's not coming back, is he, Jason?
He's not coming back
That's
to the
it.
White Sox.
That's tell you. No.
Pedro Grifol is the new manager. Some
That's
guy I
correct.
know who was a longtime coach with the Royals. He worked with the agency I used to work with. I met him on a number of occasions. He is a top-notch dude. Just one of those guys who are charismatic from the moment you meet them. Good news for White Sox fans, in my opinion.
Guys, before we say goodbye to everybody, as we wind this pod up, let me ask you a quick question. Now that he's got that ring, do you think Dusty's going to say, you know what, I'm in my 70s. I've got nothing left to prove. I'm just going to go enjoy my life. Do you think he might hang up his boots?
He alluded to the fact that he probably might not have kept going if he had have won a World Series earlier, but gave the impression that he's really happy with the city and with the ownership and with management. So I think he's definitely there for a little while longer.
Okay. To create that dynasty that you claim doesn't exist.
On the cusp, they're dynasty adjacent right now.
I say dynasty, you say dynasty. I say Dallas, you say dynasty. Anyway, let's move it on. We've got to say goodbye. Let's just pump it up one last time. The Jonny and Josh Show. We're on Twitter. We're on all the social media. Obviously, we're not going to be around for a while because we're off into the off season, but we still want you to show the love, hit the like buttons at the bottom of the screen. Don't forget what we said at the top of the show about the fact that we're actually going to be moving very soon, so do keep an eye out on that. Just to quickly remind you, we'll be moving to a new platform called Audio Boom. Sounds very sexy in the next few weeks, so if you do want to check out any of our previous episodes and or future shows, then you've got to keep an eye on our social media platforms or YouTube channel on where to find us. But Erik's very good at keeping all of us informed, so I'm sure as soon as you know the details, we will put that out. We'll put it out. We'll Twitter it. We'll do it all, and we'll put it on Facebook, etc. Don't forget to check out the Nat Coombs Show at the NC Show. Nat, of course, is the legend of Ted Fred that we are a part of, in the stable of. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube. We are everywhere. But sadly, that brings to an end the 2022 season. Boys, what have you got planned for the next 5 months apart from the obvious, spending months and hours studying for your fantasy baseball teams?
Big time curling for me. Going to try and finish. We're in the race right now to make it to the U.S. Nationals, top 8 teams in the U.S. We're right now there, but we could easily fall. So we have 3 more events left before that's determined. So
that's all happening before Christmas?
Yes, it all happens before Christmas. The Nationals are in February, so but fingers crossed for me, boys.
Hey, buddy, very much the best of. You must keep us up to date with that.
I'm the oldest SOB on this tour of American teams by far. So is
that right? Is that right? Now you know how I felt when I was doing Channel 5 baseball, and you lot used to call me Granddad. What about you, Erik? What are you up to over the next few months?
A lot of ice hockey, a lot of traveling for the Champions Hockey League, and also pondering of, will there be a season 4 of the Jonny and Josh Show? Time will tell.
Well, if there isn't, because we don't know, I just got to say, fellas, so enjoy this podcast. You guys are the best. Love Dave too. The foursome that we've gotten to ride again has been fantastic. Okay, I'm waffle. I know when I get sentimental or sensitive, it's considered a waffle. But love you, boys.
Well, guys, I want to say before we go that 100%, if you guys can do it, the way we did it this season, just like mates getting together once a month. I will 100% be there because I love hanging out with you guys. You are my baseball brothers. And quite frankly, if only my mum and the dog's listening, that's good enough for me. But for those of you out there that have been listening to the podcast throughout the 2022 season, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you for maintaining the love for this great sport that we all love so much. Enjoy your fantasy baseball. Enjoy Christmas. Enjoy the off season. And fingers crossed, we will be back in 2023. From us all on the Jonny and Josh Show. Thank you.